let's get started. And we have a couple limpers, and I raise, let me pause, I raise to 100 in late position with Queen Jack off. Again, this is a spot where I wouldn't do this in a 9-man, but in a looser ICM structure, certainly going to be good to try to ISO raise, and probably prefer to get the pot heads up if possible. And obviously Queen Jack is a pretty good hand to play in position. So the big blind calls, under the gun limper calls, and the other guy, the middle position limper, re-raises. I remember tanking for a bit here because I thought his middle position limp shouldn't be that strong since there was already a limper in front of him. It's pretty bizarre for him to limp aces in that spot to try to limp raise when, you know, being the second limper in, the chances of getting raised are definitely lower than being, let's say, the first limper in. So I was a little just suspicious and almost wanted to just pull a crazy move on him, but I folded, and so did everyone else, I think. Yeah. He mentioned a few hands later that he's like, oh, you know, he had a bunch of chips. He's like, oh, I got aces and kings and ace king, like the last 3 to the last 6 hands. So like the way he mentioned it, it sounded like he actually did have aces here, unless he's totally BSing, which is absolutely possible. But other than that, that's just a standard ISO raise and fold with Queen Jack. Another thing worth mentioning about the software is that I sort of was learning how to use this app in the first place, and I didn't really do a great job in the beginning, these first hands. I get better in the later tournaments in terms of like actually dictating that everyone who folded folds, and it becomes a little bit easier to read the replays. However, this should be easy enough, and it, like I said, I put so much time in just rebuilding these, I couldn't possibly go back and do them all over again. So we get 3 limpers. One of them is the small blind. I have 3-4 off. I check the big blind, and I'm definitely just check folding here. Nothing too interesting there. So here I have Queen 5 off in the big blind. I get a limper under the gun +1, and obviously I check my option. I check the ace 2-9 spade flop, and he bets 100 into 125, I guess, which is a little bit of a weird sizing, but I decided to check raise here. I just felt like he's not going to have a lot of ace-x when he limps in early position. He's definitely not going to have a lot of strong ace-x. If he has ace-x, it's going to be some weaker suited ace-x, I suppose. I think he's going to have a decent amount of small pocket pairs, since, again, that's the kind of hand that I think would limp in early position. Very little 9x that I can imagine, and 9x may fold to a check raise. So he could have some flush draws as well, but again, if he had bigger flush cards like Broadway type suited spades, I would expect those to kind of raise pre for the most part. So again, you might have some weak flush draws, really weak pairs, and of course occasionally he will have ace-x or 9x. So his range isn't like that weak or anything, but it's also definitely like not that strong. And there's going to be a lot of, I think there's going to be a lot of low pocket pairs actually. So I thought this is actually just a good spot for check raising. And I check raise a little bit small because I figured he's not folding an ace or a 9 or a flush draw very often in my check raises. He's mainly going to be folding just his air, which of course he could have just some random jack 10 off kind of air, and his small pocket pairs and stuff. So I didn't think I needed a really large size since to accomplish the, you know, folding out the part of his range that I wanted to fold out. So he calls, and the turn bricks off for the most part. I forgot to mention, it is worth mentioning, I started this hand with, I think, 1175 in chips. The hand history replayer is not perfect, and there's a few chip stack issues, but basically I had lost some chips from blinds and that raising the Queen Jack and then folding. So I was down about 1200-ish out of the starting 1500 stacks. So yeah, just pointing that out, that we're, 25 big blinds deep, or shallow already. So yeah, check the turn. He checks back. So at this point, when he checks the turn back, it's really unlikely he's going to have ace-x. Somewhat unlikely. It definitely becomes a little less likely he has 9x. I think it's a decent turn card for value betting 9x versus flush draws, versus some smaller pair potential. My range in the big blind should be kind of weak, although I did check raise the flop, so maybe my range is a little bit stronger. But when I check raise and then check the turn, that is pretty weak. So again, I think his range still has some small flush draws, a lot of smaller pairs, and who knows what other else crap he just feels like calling my check raise with. Sorry, lost my train of thought.